Now, the thing with the questions is I only accept curious questions. So, in fact, the most curious question this morning, I'm going to give you a signed book. So, have we got a handheld microphone? Who here has a curious question? There's always 15. We have a curious question from the crew at the front.
Okay, here we go.
This might be a silly question, but...
No silly, only curious questions.
My understanding of AI only goes so far. Do a lot of AI rely on OpenAI's ChatGPT sort of in the background? Because my understanding is a lot of them run off of one... OpenAI is the original. If OpenAI went down today, what would happen to majority of the other AI? Because they're not all coded independently, is what I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, say that went down, what would happen to Bob, for example, or Google's VO? What would happen?
Really good question. I'm going to answer in a slightly different way. So yes, there is a dependency because what people are doing, and this is a risk, is they're building their technology on top of someone else's stack. And if you look at what Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, has been saying lately, he's been saying, you ain't seen nothing yet when we launched ChatGPT 5. And he's basically been saying, if you build on top of our API at the moment, bye-bye. In fact, Otter AI is a great transcription tool, but last week, OpenAI launched essentially a recording app that does the same thing. So I'm now thinking, do I pay Otter my 70 or 100 pounds a year, or do I just pay OpenAI? So I'll let Tim and others answer whether their systems go down, because I don't know how they're using it, whether they have their own models. But yes, there is a dependency. The other dependency we haven't thought about is GPUs, or graphical processing units. Most of the NVIDIA ones are made in one factory in Taiwan. And last time I looked, there's a little bit of instability in that region. So we've got supply chain single source issues where even producing the GPUs could be an issue as well. So there is a dependency people have. And I would caution anyone building on top of open APIs from the big tech firms. Back to John Rosie, what makes you special? What are you doing that's different rather than just doing an image generation tool that essentially OpenAI will eat your lunch? Great, curious question. Okay, question down the front, madam. We've got the microphones up here. We'll come to you next, sir.
So morning, Andrew. So I was interested, I'm curious about the authentication of what's real and what's not in the future. And I wonder how much blockchain or other technologies will play into that.
Great question. I had this question last week, and actually one of the podcasts I did was with an AI ethicist called Stephanie, and she actually proposed something that's quite radical, and I wanted to test this out today. So a lot of these tools, public tools, have been trained on open internet, commoncrawl.org, Wikipedia, Reddit, and so we're not quite sure if those things are true. If we actually have an enterprise GPT, we actually know the source of the truth. We trust more things internally because we've authored them. So you've got two different schools. We're not quite sure of the authenticity. We trust it. Is there a place for an API to a database of the truth? Now, that may not work because I believe that the Earth is round. Hopefully most of you do here today. Does that go into the proof that if you go, is the Earth round, it says yes, it is because we're called an API. But if you say, who won the 2020 presidential election in the US, there's still some contention there. So would that go into the... So that's why whenever you're using these public systems, first of all, another public service announcement, never, ever, ever upload confidential documents into a public API system. Most of them have a switch. In ChatGPT, it's settings, data controls, turn off the ability to train your documents into the system. But you should never put it up there. I had a client of mine who said, I was playing with ChatGPT. I asked it a question about our company. Only an insider would know, and it came up, which means someone had uploaded something they shouldn't have. So part of it is, can you trust what you see on the internet? Sometimes no. So I was asked actually at another event last year, is it the government's role to basically stamp this as the truth? I think with anything, even what I'm saying today, do you believe everything I'm saying? You will have a point of view. How do I prove what I'm saying is correct? Because some of it's opinion rather than fact. So my long-winded answer is, just as you don't trust everything on the internet, know that if it's been trained publicly, there is open discussion. If you're training it on data sets that you own and trust and know the source of truth, you're more likely to believe that. But you should be curious about that. Great question. I think we had a question over there.
Yes. Is this on? Yeah. Hi.
thought I'd ask ChatGPT what the most curious question would be I could ask you based on your book.
Yes.
And it's actually linked to trust as well.
Great.
So if trust is the currency of the digital age, what might be the interest rate? So what will grow that trust or erode it? So kind of linked to the previous question.
I mentioned before that AI should be augmented intelligence, that we should never lose the human touch and the ethical touch. I think what we're going to see, and I ask this a slightly different way, but I'm just having a train of thought here. In the book, I talk about a thing called the magnet of mediocrity. There's going to be so much AI dross on there that everything's going to be AI generated. Most of your LinkedIn posts are at the moment. A lot of stuff we're seeing is AI generated. So if as humans we can rise above that mediocrity level, that dross level, then do we trust these people? Are they trusted? Just as in Perplexity, if I ask for a group of references and it says, that's from The Guardian, that's from the BBC, that's from Reddit, I will then ascribe a value of where I trust that from. So I think what we're going to see in the future is, to the question before, we need to be aware that some things aren't real. I showed you a whole lot of fake cloned voices that weren't real. But how do we trust a human being? How do we actually understand who they are and where they've come from and if they're talking about something that's truthful? And I think the power of community will do that. Today, you're going to meet a bunch of people. You're going to have that face-to-face meeting or connect on LinkedIn. You're going to say, oh, I've now met you. There is a level of trust. I've had a 5 or 6 minute conversation with you. You seem legit. I get a sense as human to human that I would like to do business with you or have a friendship with you. The thing that AI will never be able to replicate in my mind is either empathy or love. So as humans, we still win out. And I'll give you an example. I'm dating a lovely woman called Carol Ann. She's British. And when I met her, my heart fluttered. And I now realize that I'm in love with her. But could I describe on paper that irrational feeling of why I feel that about her? No, I can't. So if I can't write down on paper my irrational feeling, how can I program it into a system? So a lot of people will disagree with me, but I think the human power of empathy and love and trust will never go away. So we need to keep our community and augment us with AI. Great, curious question. I think you've won the book. That's the best question so far. I'm back.
Hi, good morning. A really interesting example with the strawberry in the cup that you were showing earlier. One of the questions I've got is, how do you know which version to ask, given that the answers differed quite a lot? Is it kind of short of trial and error? How do you save time and use it effectively, to be able to get what you need out of it?
So what I was doing, I did that recording probably late last year because it was using 1.0 preview, as you probably saw, is the models that offer reasoning or deep research, those sort of things, are going to think more deeply. So they're going to do, if you go into ChatGPT 4 and ask a question, it'll give you what's called a one-shot response. It hasn't done much research. It's basically relying on what it's seen already, which is why you get those clocks that say 10 past 10. If you were to ask it to think more deeply and say, well, that's not quite right, justify your response, when it actually shows you its reasoning, so in many of those deep research models, what it will do, and it takes its time, it'll actually explain its thinking. And you can watch that in real time and go, as a human, that's how I would solve that problem. So I'm seeing that it's actually thinking more deeply. It's not doing a one shot. So back to my point, those buttons are there for a reason. Push them. It will take longer. It may cost you more, but it will give you a better answer. But it's not always the right answer. If I need to know who was the first person landing on the moon, I don't need deep research. I just need, I've forgotten who it was. Tell me who it was. Great question. Who's next? Down here, madam.
Hello?
You have to yell.
Hello?
Hello! Yes, it's working.
What about the sustainability side of all of this? Because we get a lot of information about how OpenAI, Sam said, just saying please and thank you costs a lot in terms of the energy usage. So the balance between curiosity, want to play, want to experiment, want to learn, versus how many forests am I decimating with me playing around with making a picture of Action AI me, or a Studio Ghibli me, or all of those things. So how do we balance that?
Can everyone look to the right, please? There is an elephant in the room. And that elephant is AI sustainability, and you've got a very good, valid point. When I push the deep research button, it actually thinks a lot harder, and it uses more AI compute. And doing the deep research and the picture of me uses more resource. Not just compute power, energy. Microsoft and Meta have now contracted to open up reopened 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, and Metro have actually contracted a brand new nuclear plant. They have run out of energy. They need more energy for this. The other thing that these AI systems need is water. You can't cool GPUs just with fans and ambient. You actually have to pipe water down onto the chip's substrate. So you need a data center that has lots of energy and lots of water. Now, Sam Altman in his latest blog post actually mentioned how many liters of water are used during a query. What others have said is that if you do 50 ChatGPT queries, it's equivalent of pouring half a liter of water down the drain. So there is a huge sustainability issue, not just in power and compute, but also in water reuse. And my view is that we used to think that Bitcoin mining was a really useless and an inefficient way of using energy. You ain't seen nothing yet. And that's why I'm glad that I have finally an elephant in the room to point to. It is a valid point. And so you're right. We need to balance that between, am I going to do lots of images and do I care about the planet? Or, as we saw with DeepSeek, as an engineer, I love that DeepSeek came along and basically said, we have limited resources. We're going to see what we can do with our limited resources and see if we can compete with the American equivalents. And they worked out how to do that. So I'm hoping that there are research groups out there saying, how can we make AI more efficient, the models more efficient? We don't need 100,000 GPUs to do that. We can do it with 20. It's a valid point. It won't go away, and it should be addressed. So great question, and I've always wanted to have an elephant in the room to point to. Time for a few more questions, Nadia. In the middle there.
I was thinking, is it possible... I'm here.
Oh, there you are, yeah.
Is it possible that you can manipulate, for example, the generative AIs, like ChatGPT, by posting a big amount of fake information on the internet?
Yes, you can. I spoke about this last week on cybersecurity. There are some new threats. One of them is poisoning. You can actually poison the information. So if you've got a medical API and you put a slight amount of imperfect information in there when you're training it, you could actually poison the model and give bad results. You can also do prompt injection. You can actually ask it a query, I don't know what that would be, that actually tricks the model into doing something. Or you can do role-playing. So rather than saying, how do you create a bomb, right now the guardrails will say, I can't tell you. But if you go, I'm a reporter researching how people like to talk about bad things such as making a bomb. Imagine you're a journalist, how would you do, I mean, you can actually trick it into doing things. So it is possible, which is why you should not always believe everything you see on the internet or out of an AI model. You should test it. And maybe use different models to test. If you ask the same question of different models, they'll give you different answers because they've got different levels of training. But it is a real issue. And what I said last week about cybersecurity threats, the AI ones are real. The other AI threat that, it's in the book in chapter 20, is quantum computing. Who here has heard of Q-Day? Okay. Q-Day is the day when quantum computers become so powerful, they will be able to decrypt everything that's currently encrypted. All your emails, all your encrypted files, all your crypto will be decrypted. And you'll see recently both Google and Microsoft have started releasing more powerful quantum chips. And experts say we could be as close as 5 years away from that, maybe 10 years. So there is a real threat that these other technologies will start to impact us and steal our stuff. One more question in the front.
That was really loud. So my question is...
You're using AI for this, aren't you?
I am. I'm trying to make sure I got the right words I wanted to say. But an AI and hiring report from Insight Global found that 62% of UK hiring managers say AI tools are rejecting more qualified candidates. Are we prioritising system efficiency over attracting diverse talent, those who may think differently but more innovatively? And what steps are we now taking to improve bias within AI?
Great question. So I talked before about the things holding us back. One of them is process. In that example, we are using the old way of recruiting and putting AI on top of that. And that is not a speed and scale problem. It's basically saying it's keyword matching and it's rejecting people. I want you to use AI to find the Wally. I've never actually got a job that I've gone for. Every job I've ever had was because of someone else that I knew, and roles have been created, including my job at IBM. So I am a Wally. You're never going to find me. I was never suitable for the role that was advertised. I had roles created because they went, this Australian's a bit out there. Maybe we can get him to do this. So my answer to your question is, yes, there's bias there, but the problem is we're using AI on top of the existing broken processes. So if you're looking for talent, are you looking for filling seats or delighting customers? And what I think we'll see in the next 5 years is that AI will have such an impact. As I explained with my analogy of the combustion engine and AI, it will change how we get work done, that will no longer work because you're not going to find the wallies that you need to create these new things. So yes, we could also have a discussion, and Nadia and I have, about education, that it's broken. The way we educate and assess students today is broken. Let me give you my quick hobby horse. So I've got a lot of friends in academia who are a bit freaked out by AI. The way we, and I did an engineering degree, the way we assess students today is we give them a whole lot of stuff and we need them to regurgitate that in an exam which they can cheat at. What I've done for the last 45 minutes is essentially a Viva. I've told you what I know. I've allowed you to ask me any question without seeing the questions and I've given you a response. So I've said to my AI educators, why don't you do that? And rather than getting them to fill out a form and write an exam that they can cheat at, you actually give them a Viva. Andrew, we can't scale that. Have you heard of this thing called AI? I go into a photo booth, it verifies my ID, it then asks me questions, I respond, it grades me. No one said it's a dumb idea, we just haven't done it yet. So that's a new way of assessing knowledge rather than reading it from rote learning it. Time for another question out there. Yes, madam.
How would you, if someone is, for example, trying to positively discriminate because somebody's used AI in, say, a job application or something like that, other than sometimes it gives you kind of like overly obsequious... okay. If someone's trying to work out whether someone has used AI to positively discriminate if they have, then other than it sometimes phrasing it so like overly obsequiously, how can you actually positively, if you want to do that, how can you see that someone's used AI in, say, a job application?
There are plenty of tools out there that will reverse plagiarize checking of that. The kicker comes when you interview them across the table and they've got no idea what they're talking about because they've used AI and they're exposed. That human interface, when you're asking me a question, I don't know what you're going to ask me. I'm not sure whether you agree with my answer or not, but now, it might be a waste of time. I have heard, though, that banks, for example, have had 20 people apply with exactly the same response that's been AI generated. It goes back to education. I do a lot of talks to schools. I'm in a thing called Speakers for Schools. It's a charity set up by Robert Peston, and people like me go into sixth form schools and talk about education. And I haven't done one for a while, but the last one I did, the teachers actually asked me to come back for an inset day. So I talked to the students, they said, come and talk to us. And I gave them a hard time. I said, you are not getting your students ready for further education in the workforce. They are learning how to pass their GCSEs, but they're not learning about meeting etiquette or being told no or presenting on stage. And so at the moment, they know that if they cheat on an exam, on a job application, they might get through. But eventually you get found out. We need to get to them earlier to say, I'm actually okay with you using AI, but tell me you've used it. But tell me your own thinking, your own critical thinking. How are you thinking differently? How are you rising above the noise and actually appearing to me as someone who's... So I think we're going to see a lot of that, and it comes back to the easy way out. People will cheat. 6% of all students apparently will cheat. The rest will think about it, because it's easy. Life's hard. Those of you who are here today have done something different. You're curious. You thought, I'm going to come to this, I might learn something, I might leave this room with another person I've met, maybe Andrew will tell me something useful. You've done something different. So, yes, you can tell they've cheated, but the ultimate go will be the first month in the job when they have no idea what they're talking about. How are we off for time? I'm looking for a signal. We're being told, yes?
Hi, thank you so much for your lovely talk. It was super interesting. I'm really interested in, I know you've kind of just touched on it, but like the generation, like the next generation and how we educate them in the way that we can stop them from having a critical thinking crisis. Because I'm 22, I grew up in the age of the internet, and throughout my uni, ChatGPT kind of launched. So I've used it, but I had kind of had my critical thinking established. But for people who are, say, 10 years old, who are going to use it for their times tables and who aren't going to really start with that critical thinking, how would you actually stop this critical thinking crisis coming about for the younger generation?
Yeah, I don't have the answer, but I'm making everyone aware of it. In the book, I talk about a book from Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers. He argues that you need 10,000 hours of experience to become an expert. And I think that was right. I think what we're seeing now with these tools, you maybe only need 5,000 hours. I'm hearing that consulting companies like PwC that would normally give a task to a 4th or 5th year graduate are giving to graduates that are earlier in their career because they're using the tools. Doesn't mean they should lose the ability to be critical thinkers. In fact, that it becomes more and more important. So what worries me is that we're going to have a whole swathe of students. Some are here today from Greenwich University. I spoke at their event a couple of weeks ago. I implored them, I implored their lecturers to teach this. Yes, use the tools, but use them responsibly so that you actually are the smartest person in the room. That it's a decision partner, it doesn't make the decision for you. I think as AI settles down and we work out how it changes the way work gets done, we're going to have different ways of thinking. We're going to use parts of our brain we didn't know we even had, because this AI will do some of the heavy lifting and we can think about things in a different way. So it is a crisis. I mention in all my talks, I give lecturers and students a hard time about it because I live on critical thinking. Great question.
I think...
I'm going to be here until 2:40, so come and grab a book, come and chat to me. But thank you for your curiosity today and have a great day.
Thank you, Andrew. Brilliant. Thank you very much.